Hello all. It's Sunday afternoon, Sunday evening, first day of the week. And as usual, I was late getting started on my work, but I did accomplish a little bit today. Not as much as I should have, nor as much as I would have liked, but you know, that's my own fault and I'm working on it. I'm not using that as an excuse. But anyway, I have a lot of stuff. Some of it's good, some of it's junk, some of it's trash, some of it's scrap metal, and some of it is paperwork that needs to be organized, and I have no idea how to do it. Not a clue. And I've been asking for help from friends and neighbors, and you know, have even offered to pay. In fact, I had one young lady come by that was in dire straits and financial need, and you know, so we worked out an arrangement. You need X amount of money, I need these papers organized in some semblance of recognizable filing something. And so she came by, and for about 45 minutes or an hour hit at them and kind of shuffled and rifled through them a little bit. And when she left, I didn't have any idea about what I had, or any more idea about what I had when she left than I did when she got here. I paid her just the same because that was the agreement that I made with her. And you know, just because others don't hold up their end of agreements or bargains or contracts, you know, however you want to phrase it or refer to it, doesn't mean that we're not supposed to hold up to our ends of it. And this, I think, was actually in the very, very beginnings of my eyes being open to Yahweh's Torah. And I go into all that personal stuff, personal, not personal, whatever. All you have to do is drive by my house to see how junky the place is. But it's kind of the point of why I'm here talking about this stuff this afternoon. You know, every now and again in my videos you'll hear me say something about I've been straightening up in the barn, or cleaning up in the barn, or organizing in the tool room, or you know, something other like that, cleaning up under the car shelter, you know, somewhere along those lines. And that's because I'm in a constant state of straightening up and organizing and going through stuff. I've got a ridiculous amount of stuff. I have been accumulating stuff for probably 20 years, and that's not something that I'm going to get cleaned up in just a couple of weeks unless I just throw it all away, just junk it all. And that to me is not a very wise thing to do, because scripturally we're supposed to prepare for the future. Now, how is me having a lot of junk preparing for the future? Well, I go over a couple of things that I've got sitting here or hanging around in the barn, you know, that I don't use very often. But let's take, for example, right here. You know, I've got 3 rolls of air hose rolled up, 2 3/8 hoses and 1 1/2-inch hose. Now the 1/2-inch hose I use occasionally with my 1-inch drive impact wrench when I have to take wheels off of big trucks, or any kind of big nut or bolt or fastener that I can't undo with my 3/4 inch hand, you know, ratchet and sockets and whatnot. I'll break out the 1-inch drive impact wrench. All right, another thing I've got right up here, I've got lots and lots of welding rods. All of these boxes right here are not all full. Even this red toolbox here, which this red toolbox is full of welding rods. You know, and I don't do a whole lot of stick welding. There's one video where I was building a cutting edge from a backhoe. What else do I have sitting around, hanging around here? All right, well, here you go. Here's a good example. I've got a lot of wire and electrical components, you know, junction boxes, and well, this is actually called a handy box. And here I've got some nail-in boxes that go in houses that you nail up on 2x4s and whatnot. And I don't use that stuff a lot, but I do use it occasionally. For example, in the process of trying to do some more electrical work in this barn here. In fact, you'll see I've built towards the future right here in this junction box. Don't worry, this hot wire is not turned on, and everything in the box is fastened and secure according to code, because I've actually been to electrical school and I've worked as an electrician. Let's see, what else have I here? I've got some old welding lead that there's actually nothing wrong with it, but the company I was working for at the time wanted to replace it and they were just going to throw it away. So I brought it to the house. So I have lots of useful things like that sitting around. Here I have a bunch of old hydraulic cylinders that most of them are rebuildable. A couple of them actually don't even need rebuilding. This one and this one here, nothing wrong with them. They're ready to put to use. Have a job, have a purpose for them. Also, these two little orange cylinders right here, they're ready to be put to work. So there's a lot of stuff around here that I'm not just gonna throw away. But, you know, y'all don't need to see everything I've got sitting around here. Got all these hoses hanging behind me. They're hydraulic hose. This is actually non-conductive hydraulic hose. The type is used on bucket trucks and stuff like that for linemen. You know, the folks that work on the power lines. You know, they have to have non-conductive hydraulic hose and non-conductive hydraulic fluid because they're working around high voltage, and if their stuff was conductive, you know, if it would conduct electricity, then it would very likely hurt, hospitalize, if not kill, the men working, because the trucks are grounded. I mean, they're sitting on the ground. You know, they have metal outriggers that go down and make direct contact with the ground, and there's no way to isolate that except for up in the boom. But, you know, enough rambling about that stuff, because I'm sure over time you'll see bits and pieces. But it was said to me a week or so, a couple weeks, maybe a month ago, I don't remember how long it was, that cleanliness is next to godliness. All right? That phrase is nowhere in the Bible. And yes, cleanliness is important, but so is organization, which I guess organization and cleanliness kind of go hand in hand. But just think about all the phrases that you hear over the course of a year that have come out of the Bible, and most people don't know it or realize it, such as you've been weighed and measured and found wanting. That actually comes from the book of Daniel, when Nebuchadnezzar's grandson, I can't remember his name, anyway, where the hand appeared and wrote on the wall, which is actually another common phrase in everyday American English. You can't see the writing on the wall, or you can't read the writing on the wall. You know, I'm sure you've heard that. But there are a lot of phrases in American English and most likely other languages. I'm not fluent in any other languages, so I can't say, that come from Scripture, and a large majority of them are misquotes. Take, for example, there's one that my daddy used to tell me growing up, that it's better to put your seed in the belly of a whore than on the ground. And again, that's nowhere in Scripture. Where that misunderstanding or misquote comes from is there was a woman, I don't remember her name, and her husband did wickedly in the sight of Yahweh, and Yahweh slew him, put him to death. And so his brother was supposed to come in and raise up seed to his brother. Or his brother, not her brother, his brother, her brother-in-law. And he didn't want to do that. You know, he didn't want her to have a baby in his brother's name. You know, because he specifically says that, you know, if I raise up seed to my brother, then it'll be my brother's and not mine. So he spills his seed on the ground. And so Yahweh punished him. And I think there's a couple of stories like that in Scripture. But, you know, this video is kind of multifold. You know, we need to know Scripture well enough to recognize those sayings when they're said to us. And I don't know if this is more important than recognizing them or not. I think they're equally important. I think that to recognize them is just as important as this next thing. And this next thing is we should know them well enough that when we recognize them, if they are misquotes, we can correct the people who are making the quote. Because what they're doing in quoting those things inaccurately is, for one, they're violating Proverbs 18:13, which is, a man that answereth a matter before he heareth it, it's shame and folly unto him. So they're speaking out of turn. They're talking about something that they don't know about. But what they're doing more than that is they're essentially gossiping, because they're telling something that ain't so, without first-hand knowledge of it. You know, just like the misquote, jack of all trades, master of none. And I'm not going to sit here and try to explain out the history of that, because that is a misquote. You know, we understand what it means in modern contemporary society, but it's still a misquote and it's wrong. You know, just like those who argue about the Second Amendment and, separation of church and state. Well, okay, well, that separation of church and state, for starters, is not what the Second Amendment says. What the Second Amendment says, and I'll paraphrase here, is government's supposed to stay out of religion, but the government can't keep religion out of government, if that makes sense. And the reason behind that was because the King of England made Catholicism compulsory. In other words, if you were a subject in the Kingdom of England, you were a Catholic, period. And so the majority of the people who had a hand in setting up the government were Protestant and not Catholic. And so they didn't want the ways, the traditions and whatnot of the Catholics forced on them. So that's why they wrote in the amendment that allows us freedom of worship and freedom of speech and etc., etc., etc. in the Bill of Rights. Now, to take it a step further, there was a letter written, Thomas Jefferson maybe, it said something about a wall of separation between the church and the state or something other like that, and people take that all out of context and misquote it. You know, I've studied up on it and researched it and read it and stuff like that, and I don't remember it verbatim, but I understand it and remember it well enough to know that it was taken completely and totally out of context. Now, I'm gonna post a link to a web page, an article, or something or other that has a whole list of misquoted, mistaken, you know, phrases that have come out of the Bible. It's really important for us to learn and to know those things. And as far as this video being multifold, you know, I've covered at least one part of it, not as thoroughly as I would like, but I'm already 16 minutes in. So, but anyway, the next part is, with all this stuff that I have sitting around, you know, my intent has always been preparing for the future. You know, this is useful, that is useful, all these different things are useful. Well, at what point do you draw the line between someone who's frugal and pragmatic and someone who's a hoarder? I can't define that. I guess it's a very subjective understanding, you know, and by subjective I mean that each person probably has their own definition. Now, I've got kinfolks who have a whole lot more stuff than I do. It's a different type of stuff, but you know, volume wise it's more stuff, and I'll say less junk and more useful items, so to speak, or at least more immediately usable items such as chairs, tables, you know, furniture, stuff like that, dishes and whatnot. But all of my stuff is immediately useful, well, not all of it, but the majority of it is immediately useful in the right situation, in proper circumstances. So who's to say what's hoarding and what's pragmatic frugality, if that's a word? You know, pragmatically frugal. Yeah, we'll phrase it like that. You know, I have right here an aluminum fuel tank. It's, I don't even remember how many gallons it is. Maybe you'll be able to see it right there. Right there. Off of an 18-wheeler. Now, I also happen to have a very, very small single axle trailer that is an old military trailer, so it's got a lunate eye on it, a military hitch. And that's what I have on most of my other trailers. And it was stripped down. Apparently the body of it had rusted away. It was just one of those little bitty small trailers that you see in MASH and stuff like that whenever they were pulling a trailer behind a Jeep. You know, just small like that. And anyway, the body had rusted off of it, so they did away with that and set it up as a sprayer trailer, so it had a tank on it. Well, the sprayer unit went bad and just, you know, the whole thing wound up getting junked. Well, not junked. The sprayer part was junked, but the trailer is still, you know, is in good shape. It needs some tires on it, Probably need to pull the wheel bearings apart and repack them. Otherwise, it's in excellent shape. Frame's not rusted out. You know, it can stand a paint job. But the intent is to take that fuel tank and that trailer and put them together. And so I have me a portable fuel tank. That way I don't have to keep toting gas cans back and forth to the gas station to get fuel for my backhoe and my wood splitter and my dump truck and stuff like that. Yes, I can drive the dump truck to the filling station, but if I'm going to drive the dump truck to the filling station to fill it up, then I have to carry gas cans on that, or I have to pull the backhoe, or I have to pull the wood splitter, or something like that. So why not just pull one trailer, get all my fuel at one time, and then I can fuel up my 3 diesel machines, and boom, you know, saves a lot of aggravation, a lot of time. It really does. Plus, the dump truck is difficult to get up to the gas pumps because people are not courteous. They see you sitting there waiting, you know, they pull up, they fill up, they've already paid for their fuel, and then they go in and they want to buy candy bars and stuff like that. Meanwhile, the whole time they see you sitting there and you can't get to the diesel pump until they move away from the gas pump. You know, people just aren't courteous. So, at what point does it become hoarding? I don't know. But I do know since Yahweh opened my eyes to Torah, I have had a desire to get all this stuff cleaned up, straightened up, organized, and everything else. And just my whole world is in an uproar. So y'all listen to the things that people are saying. Listen for all those common little phrases that we think we know so well and understand so well, but we really don't. And I'll just leave it at that. Remember Acts chapter 17, verses 10 and 11. The Bereans were more noble than the Thessalonians in that they received the word with all readiness of mind, yet searched the scriptures daily to prove whether those things were so. In other words, they went to church, or they went to synagogue, they went to Bible study, they listened and, you know, heard their teachers and whatnot, and then they searched the scriptures out themselves to make sure that their teachers weren't wolves. And then there's 2 Timothy chapter 2, verse 15. For the sake of time, I'm going to let you look that up on your own. And like I mentioned earlier, Proverbs 18:13. So, y'all have a good evening, a good day, whenever it is that you're, you know, and I hope to see you all in the kingdom of heaven. Yahweh bless.